Hi, and welcome to the Behavioral Business Blueprint, where we dive into the world of behavioral health entrepreneurship. This episode, I have someone special that has owned and successfully exited her ABA business and currently sits on the board of the Florida Association of Behavior Analysis as the executive director. Welcome to the show, Melissa Olive. How are you
Hey,
doing?
Arthur. It's so great to be here. I do just want to disclose for all of your listeners, I am not here on behalf of FABA, and I am not speaking for FABA. I'm here today as me, Missy Olive. It's so great to be here.
Yes, and I'm making sure I not ask any questions related to that today. I'm just curious. We met last year at the Autism Investor Summit. Did you have a chance to go this year?
I did not get to go. My husband is battling bladder cancer. And
Oh,
so we
okay.
were actually in New York for a procedure for him. And so I had to miss, but it is one of my favorite conferences. And Sarah and Ronit do an amazing job with that event.
Yes, I didn't make it this year, but my goal is for next year to attend. So we met last year, and just so happens we're both here in Florida, which it's always good to see somebody from Florida. And are you originally from Florida, or you moved to Florida recently?
We moved to Florida in July of 2022, and that was a long term plan with my husband. He and I had gone to college together, and we reunited several years after his divorce. And at the time, he was living in Connecticut, and I was living in Austin, Texas. And so I relocated to Connecticut to be with him, knowing that I was only going to be there 13 years and when that little one graduated. And so she graduated June the 12th or 13th, and we arrived here on July the 1st.
So you moved from Texas to Connecticut. That's where you had the business, right? Was it
My business was
Connecticut?
in Connecticut, and we expanded to Florida. We had locations over in Melbourne and also in Bradenton. And then we were getting ready to launch into um, in that northeast corridor, south of Jacksonville, but north of Daytona Beach, and
Okay.
then and also Cape Coral, and that's what we were doing at the time of my acquisition.
I'm just so curious. How do you expand to those many places? You start from one state. I mean, it's hard enough to expand in one state, but then you go to another state with different rules. Were you dealing with any Medicaid at all?
So we had actually applied to Medicaid, but we were literally signing our application when the moratorium went in. And so they weren't taking any applications for a period of time. And that was when it transitioned from Beacon over to EQ Health. And so we held off to see what would happen, but then I was acquired. And so we did not. The Medicaid rates in both Connecticut and Florida are abysmal. They are the lowest in the 50 states, and they
Oh,
are getting ready to be improved. We don't know the exact dollar amount just yet, but there's a hearing on Wednesday or Thursday of this week about those rates, and so we're hoping that that it's a nice increase to allow more people to go into network with Medicaid in order to meet the needs of all the kids in the state.
that would really help the wait list. And I'm actually surprised to hear that Florida and Connecticut would have the lowest rates. I understand Florida, we're in the South, it's just a lot different, but usually up north it's a little bit better because I think about education wise, when it comes to exceptional student education, it's always better up north. There is no comparison. As you come further south, it really changes. So to hear that rates in Connecticut are low compared are the same as Florida, that's mind boggling. Because I know when I used to have an ABA agency, I was always shocked when I looked over, right next to us or above us is Georgia, and I'm like, how are your rates looking like this? I just used to laugh. I'm like, almost double. I mean, good gracious. That's all I can say is we have to do better.
We do have to do better, and hopefully that will happen. But Arthur, we can't talk about Florida without talking about the fraud. And our
Yeah,
state
yeah.
is most impacted of all the 50 states. All you have to do is go look on the BACB webpage, and you can see that Florida monopolizes their ethics investigations. And it would not surprise me in the future if they start charging more to be a BCBA in Florida or an RBT in Florida because of the amount of work that they're having to do with all of the fraudulent activity.
Yeah, I was very shocked. I used to hear that when I came into the field 2017. So I was kind of new and I kept hearing about fraud. I didn't understand what that was. I didn't understand. I was new. I didn't even understand insurance. So I kept hearing insurance fraud and Medicaid. I didn't understand. And I remember what was back in 2021 is when they started or they attempted to do the check-in.
So yeah, the
And
EVV,
that was,
visit
oh
verification.
gosh, that was a headache. I was so nervous because I was just starting out. So it kind of even forced my hand with the software I chose because I was like, well, I need to be able to track something that reads into the system because I did not want to count on any state funded system to track. But then when I went to the a conference, I'm talking to everybody else that's already started it. I'm hearing these horror stories of I'm checked in, but then it's not reading, so now we can't get reimbursed. And I'm hearing people from larger companies say this. In my head, I'm small. I think I had one employee at the time. Like I can't afford for them to work and then it not count. Like I was getting scared, and luckily it didn't go through. Some things worked out. And I know you can't speak on them, but I'm glad our local agency representative for our state of ABA was monumental in fighting that because that was a nightmare. If we're a small business, every dollar counts. So some things you said you moved to Connecticut, and I'm thinking in my head, you said 13 years. So you were in business in Connecticut for about what, 10 years?
Exactly 10
And
years.
you started because I was on, of course, your LinkedIn page. So it looks like you started 2010. And this is before insurance, was required to cover this. So you were in this
Most
before.
in most states. So this was serendipitous. I don't know if you've read the work by Malcolm Gladwell, but he writes about how people being in the right time at the right time, in the right place at the right time, can actually lead to great success. And he talks about Bill Gates and he talks about Steve Jobs and where they were in the invention of the computer. Well, I feel the same way for ABA. So I was working in Texas. I had actually left academia and was working for Card, the big Card.
Oh, wow.
And I worked there from 2007 to 2010. And Doreen allowed me to move to their New York office. And so I transferred from Austin to New York Card. And in 2009, the Connecticut law passed. And again, serendipitous. That was not part of my plan. It just happened. And so when that law passed in 2009 and that commute from Connecticut to New York was so great and stressful, my husband, who is a businessman by training, said, "Hey, you should open your own business." And I thought, why would I do that? And then I did. And so it was an amazing experience, a learning experience. I think if I have to say one thing to future business owners, business is a scope of practice, just like supervision is a scope of practice, just like feeding is a scope of practice. And you should not run and open up a business until you have had formal training or coaching or mentoring in business. But again, I was very lucky because the insurance law had just passed. I got in very early. I also negotiated my rates on a regular basis, which most BCBAs don't even know how to do, don't
Wow.
even know they can do. They just take those low rates and they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just make that work. When in fact, that rate has to cover all your business experience expenses. So that includes your practice management software, your data collection software, paying for HR help, paying for an employment company who may handle your payroll and other things. And so it is not just that, oh, they pay $45 for an RBT and I can pay them 20 and I'm going to make $25 in profit. That will barely cover your expenses. You need to know how much does it cost to do 1 hour of ABA.
I feel like you're talking to me because I think when I decided to go out, I did have a coach, luckily, and I always talk. It's so important to have a coach or mentor. But I remember originally sitting down in my home office and writing down numbers of, okay, this is how much we get reimbursed. Oh, I can just pay X amount of dollars. I thought like that until I actually started, and then I actually had to go back as I started to learn about taxes and all the stuff you have to pay for. I literally thought like that. I wrote it down. I said, "Oh, we get reimbursed X amount of dollars." I don't know in my head. I don't know why taxes did not come to me at first. I mean, now that's the first thing I think about is, okay, how much do I need to put away for taxes? It's one of those things you learn the hard way. And honestly, I look back sometimes and wonder how I even survived because I was trying to help out kids in foster care. Kids in
Mhm.
foster care have one insurance
Right.
with not the best rates at all. So I don't know how that worked out. I did have other contracts,
Yeah.
but I just
But
chose to.
let's do talk about that insurance piece because, as you know, many of the people in Florida are choosing to misclassify their workers. And so there is
Oh
a new
yeah.
employment law that passed and went into effect in March of this year. There's a great town hall on Behavior Live that FABA hosted. We had attorney Paul Crusette. He's an employment attorney and he works at Stearns and Weaver. We had him come on and talk to people about how they should be classified appropriately. And so that's another aspect of your taxes. So not only are you paying your income taxes on how much profit you might be making on your business, but you also need to be paying employment taxes for your workers. Hiring them or bringing them on as independent contractors is a major misstep in ABA unless you're bringing someone on as a consultant for a very short term. So maybe your policies and procedures need to be written. And so bringing on a BCBA as a consultant to write those for you, and then they would leave when that's finished. The business of ABA is dominated by the service of ABA, and therefore a contractor would not be doing ABA because that would make that person an employee because it's central to the business. An ethics consultant, or again, a policies and procedure consultant, or a billing consultant. Those people are short term and very expertise focused, and so we've got to help get the word out that if someone is an independent contractor and they're just doing ABA,
Mhm.
they are misclassified.
And I don't know, people just like to pick on Florida, especially the southern part. And I'm always curious, is it just happening here? Because that was one of the biggest things that I've learned over time. Because when I came into the field, I remember, I won't say the name, but a particular company, that's how they were hiring. And they are very large. And they were hiring RBTs, were 1099s. And, I was new, I didn't know anything. I was just happy. Other than the tax part, I wasn't too fond of that. And I remember they switched when something came out eventually, and it was an adjustment. But I mean, that went on for a long time. I'm pretty sure they benefited from that time
So,
period.
and not giving you medical, if they have you misclassified as an independent contractor, they're not covering your medical expenses, they're not covering your unemployment insurance, and they're not covering your workers' comp and your professional liability insurance. Those are all expectations of employers. And so all of these RBTs that have been misadvised to call themselves RBTs as independent contractors, they need to renegotiate and get themselves appropriately classified because there will be a crackdown with this new law. And so we're just waiting.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see because I always hear they always say South Florida, but what I've found over time, I'm a little bit further north. A lot of those agencies are moving up here, and I'm looking at. I don't know. I'm probably the most curious person. When I see a new agency, I like to Google them, look them up, see where they are, where they registered, and a lot of them that are coming up here. I love that they're not just. Well, I found it interesting. They're not just ABA. They usually have speech and PT also involved, and then they just throw that ABA part in there.
Mhm.
And I see how they hire because I've had one that came to me from another place, and they said, "Wow, I think this is kind of odd." At least they knew it was odd. Nobody had to tell them that they're 1099. And they said,
Right.
"I like to come, work for you." And I just start looking into them, and I'm like, "Wow, they're Miami." I don't know. I'm sure it's all over South Florida, but everybody just loves to pick on, Miami. I said, "That's a
Well,
great place."
Arthur, I don't think that we're picking on Miami. We had a monumental event this month. There are now more RBTs in Miami-Dade County
Oh.
than in the entirety of the state of California. So just let that sink in.
And you know what I know about California, they are able to not, they don't have to, I don't know if it's changed, but I know last year they didn't have to be RBTs. That was one of the things I never understood. They have to, I think they were calling themselves behavior technicians, and then they would say, well, if I become an RBT, then I can
Medicaid.
get.
Yeah, every state Medicaid has a different rule for what they require. So their state Medicaid may not require it, but I guarantee you many of their commercial payers do. And
Mm.
so, we saw that shift as the RBT became a more recognized credential. We saw more and more payers expect that. But there's no reason why Miami should have more RBTs than the entire state of California, except for the fact that that is where the majority of the fraud is taking place. And they during the Miami moratorium, they made their way over here to Naples and also down into the Florida Keys. I might
I saw
add
that.
that the number of children with autism in the Florida Keys, does not match the number of children with autism, say in Miami.
And I
Or
thought about that too, because I'm like the Keys. I mean, I forgot how many Keys there are, but I'm
I
like,
was
how
just
many
there
people
this
actually
week.
live
There's
there? I
quite a
said the Keys is a you go to visit. There's a few people that yes they live there, but
right,
I thought that's very interesting. They were able to pull that off because I know when I was open, I never wanted to go outside of a certain mile range because I was always worried. Well, you need to have another Medicaid number, which I'm not a fan that they
right,
require that compared to other places where you can have one
right,
Medicaid number cover the whole state. But I
right.
said that was interesting, and I said Medicaid has to figure something out, or they need to. I wish they would just say a particular mile radius and put it out there because they don't have one. They just say that hey, you have to cover a certain mile radius, but they will never tell you how far. So let's just say if I'm in Jacksonville, does that mean that is it reasonable that I can go to Orlando? That's 2 hours away. Is that fair? As long as you don't only have one building.
Mhm.
But for me, I'm too nervous. I don't like messing with insurance. I don't want to find out. So I
Agree.
stayed in my little area. I don't even think I went to Gainesville, which would probably have been about an hour and a half or an hour away from it. If it's not within this local counties here, I don't want to deal with it. If I did, I would want to have another address, which means another number. It's hard to get a Medicaid number. That's
Mhm.
one thing I didn't know. It was easy for me to get it, and then afterwards I started reading about everybody else because I didn't know too many people personally that were in the business, and everybody was like, "Well, how did you get a number?" I'm like, I don't know. Honestly, now that I think about it, I said it was just the right time. It was a different process because
And
I
you were in
think,
a different location. I think location matters.
yes.
They want to allow providers in the areas where they have a need. And so I don't know if you know Marielle at CAS, the Council for Autism Service Providers. So she's the vice president of governmental relations there. She had previously been at Blue Sprig. And so during her advocacy work at Blue Sprig, she had developed a beautiful spreadsheet where she showed network inadequacy for ACA county by county for Florida. And it's quite interesting, where we have plenty of providers and where we need others. And so I suspect that ACA does the same thing, that they look at where they have a need. And if you're in that area, they're likely going to admit you.
And that's what I would like to see in Florida. providers going to smaller areas,
Mhm.
because I'm thinking about Gainesville is really small. And then when I think from a business perspective, I know that a lot of RBTs are usually in college or they're college age. So I mean, some of course are much older, but I just think about the people that are really going to school for ABA. They're in these college towns, and I said this college town is so underserved. I said, man, if somebody else could open and just provide the right benefits, you have University of Florida right there.
Mhm.
So that's how my mind thinks when I see small towns, because I used to get phone calls from places that were 2 hours away, and when they would call, I would assume that they thought that I would be able to provide services and go out there to them. Like, no, we're used to coming, 2 hours. We don't have anything here. Doctor's appointments, psychiatrist appointments. And I'm just amazed. And I said, it's going to take somebody special. I mean, I know somebody and they actually, that's what they do. They love going to small towns. But again, when you think about business, it's hard to go into a small towns and your reimbursement rates are so low. You have to be able to stay afloat. You don't want to just open up and close. That's the
Right.
worst feeling, to
But
open
also,
up.
as someone who may be coming into the profession, they have to choose between being an RBT, or so my boyfriend, my nephew has a girlfriend who they live in Tennessee, which is a very rural part of Tennessee, and he is currently working at a Walmart distribution center. He's 19 years old and he makes $40 an hour. Now, granted, he has to be sort of in an air conditioning unit. He has to wear a jacket. He works 12-hour shifts, but he's not being bit. He's not being spat upon. He's not having his hair pulled. He's not being kicked. He's not being called names, right? So he makes
Yeah.
$40 an hour to do that. His girlfriend wants to be a BCBA. She's amazing. I have a brother with autism and is profound autism and an intellectual disability. She's fabulous with him. And when she told me she wanted to be a BCBA, it made my heart sing.
I can imagine.
She interviewed for an RBT position and they offered her $17 an hour. What would you choose?
Ah,
Right? Our hearts put us into the field of behavior analysis, but the paycheck might drive you over to a Walmart or even a McDonald's will pay often more than what we're getting paid. And again, all you
mhm.
have to do is go onto Reddit and read the RBT channel. Our RBTs are reporting so many PTSD symptoms. They're reporting a lack of supervision. They are reporting being thrown into the jungle with all kinds of profound and serious behaviors with no support from their BCBA. Now, I also understand that Reddit is not peer reviewed, and so it might not necessarily be the truth, but there are thousands of RBTs writing about their experiences, and it is very scary, especially when you and I are both BCBAs and we know what kind of supervision BCBAs need to be providing those RBTs to make them feel supported, to make them feel safe, and to help them be successful.
Yeah, I just think back to my time, and what would stop me from taking some people is just knowing, can I be there? Like, I'm comfortable being here, but then I have to think, can I find somebody that has the same passion, that doesn't mind coming here? Because I always tell people, getting hit, bit, it comes with the territory. What I'm doing now, I have a little kid, it comes with the territory, but a lot of people just won't do it. And I think about those rates of what you're getting paid. I'm thinking about California, and I know what they pay some of the RBTs or behavior technicians. And I'm looking like, well, now the fast food rates of what they have to pay, you can get paid more to do that, and they're probably going to give you benefits as well. It's hard, and we're so
And
young.
doctor.
Oh yeah, that yeah. It's I don't know. We're still so young, so I'm sure with the private equity that's coming into the field, it's going to continue to grow. We need it. I know some people are against it, but I see the positive. I had a positive experience, my acquisition. So I see it as a huge need, especially going to the Autism Investor Summit and getting to talk to some of these owners that are in within private equity. Like their heart is there, and they have a unique sense. The ones that I met, at least, they had a unique sense of knowing that they have to make X amount of dollars within a certain amount of time, but they also knew about the level of care. And they had some unique things of how to do it. And I said, that's why I love being on the outside now. I don't have to focus too much on being in the business. I can actually listen to people and really take in what they're saying to see, oh, maybe this will work. Maybe 10 years from now, maybe I want to come back.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think how long's it been for me? 20, it's been 4 years. I'm not quite ready to go back.
No, not for that. I love what I'm doing now, and that's long-term plan. But I just love just hearing other people because a lot of people don't go to conferences. That's one thing I always try to tell people. You have to go to conferences. It doesn't always have to be in, if you're within the ABA field, it doesn't have to be an ABA one because those conferences are always going to touch on working with the clients. But when you go to different conferences like Autism Investor Summit, Behavioral Health Business, they have a few that they offer. And I really want to go to a few of those, especially with this value care.
Right.
I,
Well,
I
and
gotta,
Arthur, Behavior Lab has done an amazing job of making conference access easier. So, in full disclosure, FABA is under a contract with Behavior Lab to host our conference. And so we have been hybrid since COVID, and Behavior Lab has made that possible. They, you brought up private equity. I'm actually on a private equity panel on Friday on Behavior Lab at the Autism Partnership Conference out in California. Rosemary Batt, who has a lot to say about private equity, is also going to be on that panel. She wrote a very informative piece on private equity about a year ago, maybe not even, maybe August was when it came out. So I think it's going to be a pretty exciting panel. In 2 weeks, Arthur, so the 24th of April, I am joining the amazing team at Verbal Beginnings University. So they host free webinars every week on Behavior Live. I have 4,000 people signed up to join me discussing supervision in 2 weeks. 4,000 people, Arthur. Think about
4001. I just signed up before we start this. I didn't even realize I must have missed the email.
Yep, it's free and it's so exciting that I don't understand how they can afford to do that for free, but I commend them for making that type of learning available to so many people. It's great, and so conferences are a great way to do that. And like you said, the Investor Summit is a great one. I also argue that the Autism Law Summit is great. CASP is great. And of course, your state association. I mean, you have to go to FABA
Yeah.
or Kentucky ABA or Connecticut ABA, wherever you might be listening. Go to your state conference because then you get to meet other people from your state and make friends and share in the headaches of your work or in the excitement of your work.
Well, you know what? I'm just going to end it on that one. It's important to go to your conferences. I mean, thank you so much, Missy. I could honestly keep going. I'm probably going to reach out to you again for us to talk some
I would
more. But thank you for listening to this episode of Behavioral Business Blueprint. Missy, if people want to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do that?
They can use my Gmail address, which is Missy Olive, PhD at gmail.com. A lot of people think I'm Oliver, and I'm not. I'm like that fruit that goes on your pizza or in your martini. Missy Olive, PhD at gmail.com.
I love that. Well, thank you, Missy.
Thank you, Arthur.